I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will now be in executive session and return shortly. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And we're going to start with the approval of the settlement agreement and release of claims in dual class action litigation. I'd like to make a motion to approve the settlement agreement and release of claims in dual class action litigation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. All right. Dr. Foley, roll call.
President Schultz, members of the board, please let the record show that 4 members are present.
Take this time for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Foley, I make a motion to approve the agenda. Questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Dr. Foley, Superintendent's report.
President Schultz, members of the board, tonight we are not doing our points of pride, but I just have some upcoming events. As you can see, that our spring break is right around the corner, and we have lots of employees who've worked hard and we hope they enjoy the next 2 weeks. And we have some employees who'll be working hard over spring break to get schools ready so when students return on March 27th. And as you can see, we have a few more updates on there, but that concludes tonight's superintendent report.
Thank you. Request to speak. We value input from our constituents. This time is set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Please remember this is not an appropriate venue to evaluate, discuss, or criticize district personnel. Policy KEB provides a process for complaints about personnel. Speakers should be aware that false statements about individuals may result in civil liability. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And we will start with Mrs. June Blaine.
Vice President Anderson, board members and cabinet members. I just wanted to take a minute to commend the district on the process that was used when creating the strategic plan. It was a very open and transparent process. The voices of stakeholders were heard, they were used, and helped create this cohesive plan that the district is able to follow. I'm proud of my participation in this, the work that was done, and I look forward to the district's future success by following this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mrs. Mindy Brocker? I'm sorry. I didn't see the R, I apologize.
Thank you so much. My name is Mindy Brocker. I am the mom of 3 children in the Higley School District. I've got one in elementary, middle, and high school. And I wanted to just take some time tonight to thank the school administration and our school staff for the tremendous job that they do to keep this district running. In today's environment, it's quite the political tightrope that they walk, and I think we as parents take much of it for granted. I also want to specifically praise our Higley teachers. I've not agreed with every one of them, but you know what? I still appreciate each and every educator superhero. They've made my children think. They've challenged them in ways that I never could. My kids are amazing, but they're not easy. I've sat in IEP meetings, gifted curriculum presentations, I've requested library book exceptions and name change accommodations. I've had discussions with teachers about 7th grade science education and high school cell phone contracts. And throughout all of it, every Higley employee has been gracious and kind. I have not doubted for a moment that our school leaders have our children's best interest at heart. Maybe tonight, I can be a voice for other parents like myself who are just very tired of the constant drive to destroy public schools. So, despite my deep-seated dread of public speaking, as you guys can tell, here I am, humbly requesting that this board not cave to political pressure from district outsiders. I hope to give voice to parents who appreciate their kids' educators, who trust and appreciate public education, who are very tired of attacks on children and teachers in some strange attempt to make a boogeyman out of anything that makes them feel some kind of way. So please, continue to support my child as a whole human, understanding that improved emotional and social learning makes for a better student with better results. Please continue to teach my child about the world around them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll continue to do my best, my very best, to parent them the best way that I know how. And with that, I think they'll do pretty good. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Rebecca Mejia.
Good job with my name. Often gets butchered. So I am Rebecca Mejia. I have spoken here before. I'm sure I will speak here again. My family has been part of HUSD since 2007. My two oldest are away at college. They're well prepared, even though they graduated during COVID. Thank you, Higley. My husband just returned Sunday from El Paso with the Higley High softball team, and my baby leaves tomorrow for New York with her Higley High dance team. I want to thank Higley for all the opportunities. It's been amazing. There have been times where I've disagreed with the district, disagreed with how money was spent, maybe disagreed with COVID mitigations or lack thereof, maybe disagreed with how a wayward teacher was handled. But our family has always stayed. We've always tried to make this a better place. We've always tried to represent the district in a positive way, always tried to keep the district inclusive, competitive. I am here because I see people at board meetings who I've never seen around the district before, trying to change who we are, trying to make us less inclusive, less kind, and in the end, less competitive. My husband and I have worked hard to make our children critical thinkers, people who stand up for the little guy, people who recognize that there are many paths in life that are way different than theirs. We love when the school reiterates those values. To hear people coming in using the Bible and politics to taint the work that HUSD has done is angering. To single out one segment of the student population and make them seem less than or bad. The LGBTQ clubs here are no more about sex than the homecoming dance or the Sadie Hawkins dance. They are a club for kids who are living a common experience, or for kids who want to learn about an experience different than their own, just like the International Club, the Key Club, the Black Student Union, Best Buddies. Please know that most parents in this district are not against these clubs. We want HUSD to allow representation of all our kids. I see people coming to board meetings with an agenda that is not ours. If they follow the pattern I've seen in other districts, they'll start with the clubs, starts with science camp, and then move on to banning books, changing our history curriculum. We see it happening other places. Please don't let it happen here. We need to get back to the problems we actually do have. I have 2 years left in this district. I don't want to sit and watch it get corrupted. So I'm asking more parents to stand up, push back. I ask more parents, this board, and this admin, don't let this loud minority population distract you from real issues that will move us forward, not backward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Barbara Summers.
Hello. First, I want to say Happy International Women's Day. We appreciate all of you. In our recent board meetings, I've noticed that we've had an influx of people speaking out against inclusivity, diversity, and social emotional support focused on the whole child that we have in our community and that allows us to all send well-rounded adults into society. These comments have been most recently focused on our high school clubs, and I've seen even some of our elected members question things that would come from a place of exclusion. I have 2 children who have been in our district. My oldest is queer and also twice exceptional and was on an IEP. One of the most amazing individuals you'll ever meet. Throughout their time in our district, they were always included and given opportunities by our staff, and they were not an easy child. We've had individuals that either of us could reach out to for a check-in, had staff, teachers, principals, and others visit in the hospital, and most recently, 2 years after they graduated, I received a call from the district wanting to follow up on their success as an adult. My child needed social emotional support while they were in school. That is the kind of district I want for my family and for others. That is the kind of district we are and why we choose to be here. I've heard that the loudest individuals are often the minority. I've noticed an uprising in groups advocating for things that are seemingly innocuous, like parental rights, to use parents as pawns to advance hateful agendas and harass public schools. We know that these kind of tactics can lead to anti-inclusive violence against individuals. I feel like I'm not alone in my beliefs that many of us strive to create a truly inclusive district, somewhere where all students, families, and staff are welcome and supported, and our students have an equal opportunity to participate and thrive in academic and co-curricular programs. The best education occurs in districts and schools that are comprised of students, families, and staff drawn from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, cultures, races, religions, abilities, and sexual orientations. We need to support and implement programs, practices, and co-curriculars that allow equitable access and enable all of our students to thrive, not only academically, but athletically, emotionally, and socially by allowing access to resources, opportunities, support, and interventions that maximize not only their academic success, but their social emotional growth, and where all forms of diversity are recognized and accepted. I appreciate that our district is like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then Mrs. Carolyn Lammert.
Thank you. I'm starting to think I should have written something down. I didn't write anything down. Just speaking from my heart today. Thank you for having me. I'm a longtime Higley mom. My oldest started in kindergarten here and graduated in 2018. Since, I've had a 2020 graduate, a 21 graduate, I'll have a 23 graduate and a 24 graduate, and then I'm done. Most recently, I had the privilege of being the chairperson for the Higley, Yes for Higley Schools PAC. Unfortunately, it did not pass. I'm here to address that a little bit and thank those of you that supported it. A lot of hard work went into that, and I want to recognize those in our community and in our board that supported that effort. For those of you that did not, and like my high school teachers would say, you know who you are, I would like to say that I hope you take this opportunity to really dive in to the needs of the district and the issues that are at hand and why that bond was so important. And coming up in the future, whatever the school district does decide, that it is recognize the needs and the issues at hand, why we are in the position we are in the demographic that we are in this region. There's a lot to go into it, and I hope that those of you that didn't support it take that opportunity to really dive in and learn, because knowledge is power. I would like to thank the efforts of, I know the previous board isn't here anymore, but the board and district to continue the improvements at Higley High despite the bond not passing. I'm excited to see on the agenda that there is approval for that phase 2 going through, and it is desperately needed. There's some amazing staff and amazing teachers and amazing kids that attend that school, and it is long overdue, the improvements that it is getting. So I thank you, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. And Mrs. Linda Payne.
Hello, Board. My name is Linda Payne. I don't know how to address everybody here, so I'm sorry. But I just would like to talk on the passage. I know last time they were talking about the teachers' raises and everything, and they were saying that, well, if the bond isn't passed the next time, they're going to be getting rid of the music programs and so forth and so on. I think this district needs to learn to live on what we're given and not keep taxing the people. The people have been taxed enough, and the majority of the people in this district do not want the bonds. We have found that as we've gone door to door, and I will fight it just like I did the last time. And I hope you will really consider not even putting it on the docket again, because we need to live within, we're given enough money in this school district to, if we need to take money from the administration and give to the teachers, then that's what we need to do, because the teachers are the ones that deserve to be paid, and so do the others. But I feel like the administration, many people at the top are paid way, way more than the teachers are being paid, and I know that their education level is higher and stuff. But at the same time, I think we probably could take money from the top and give it to the teachers. There's many, many ways that we can cut the budget. I just feel like we as I have been here for 35 years. I have 9 kids my 9 grandkids in this district, and I want them to get a good education, because I would prefer them going to somewhere else, and they're just about at that point, and you're going to have a lot of other kids leaving the district if you don't really try to live within the means that we have. I've talked to a lot of the legislators, and they've told me that this district is getting plenty of money. And anyway, and on the extra, another thing that I wanted to touch a little bit about was, I don't know, as I was watching the film last time, because I couldn't be here, when some of the board members were talking, I felt that there was a real disdain for specific ones by the way that your faces were. You need to show respect to the other board members, whether you like what they're saying or what they're not saying. But I could tell as I was watching that some of you definitely would roll your eyes and go shake your head when certain ones would be talking. And so I would just like to ask you to be more careful with that, because people go back and watch these films. I went back and watched them. And I think that each of you are trying to do the best you can. But at the same time, I really hope you'll understand that we as a district need to live within our means and do not need a bond to make the extra money, because it really is a tax. You say it's no tax. It is a tax to us. And so that's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right, moving on to consent agenda items. I make a motion that we approve 6.1 to 6.10. What's it? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Questions, comments, concern? Sorry.
I do have a question.
Okay.
So on 6.1, I saw that there are many books purchased from Permabound Books. And I'm curious to know if per ARS 15721 and 15722, which requires books to be posted and for review for 60 days, and I'm wondering if that will happen with the following books that were purchased.
President Schultz, Board Member Van Hook, yes, it will. We have systems in place to ensure that those are posted and kept there for honestly more than 60 days is what we determined. So we have systems in place.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. Any other questions? All those in favor? Yeah, Christina seconded. Well, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to information items, 7.1, maintenance and construction update. Mr. Moore?
Yeah, good evening, President Schultz, members of the board. Tonight, our maintenance department felt left out with transportation having all the glory last board meeting, so we have invited them to provide the board with a maintenance and construction update. So with that, I'll introduce Mr. Rich Dobson, the Director of Maintenance and Construction, and Mr. Tim McDonald, the Assistant Director. So.
Good evening, President Schultz, members of the board, Dr. Foley, cabinet members. Pleasure to be here this evening to give you an update of the Maintenance and Construction Department. Sorry about that. Just a little bit about us. We keep the buildings going, servicing 19 sites and over 60 buildings totaling 1.7 million square feet and 300 acres of land. It takes a lot of people behind the scenes to keep school district running with minimal interruption to students' learning. Our maintenance crew, we have 12 skilled tradesmen, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, drywall, painting, and just general maintenance. We have 57 custodians with 13 plant foremen and 13 grounds crew keepers. Along with this, we outsource 5 of our elementary sites that do the evening cleaning and 6 of our sites for weekly landscaping. Excuse me. Some of the major highlights we're going to talk to you about is FMX implementation. That is the district's maintenance and work order system. Custodial, we're going to talk a bit about hiring, how many we've hired this year, and how many we intend to hopefully hire. Major maintenance, we'll talk about weatherization, traffic control, and the Higley Classroom Edition. ESSER, which is the elementary and secondary school emergency relief. We've purchased some global controllers, chillers, walk-in coolers, freezers, and HVAC equipment. Grounds, we've purchased some new equipment, updated playgrounds, and an never-ending weed and pest control. And we're going to be talking a little bit about future projects that's going to be going on in the district coming up, past and present. The FMX implementation, we're going to talk about that first. Maintenance work orders. To date, since January of 22 to January of 23, we've completed over 2,400 work orders. This could be just from fixing a leaky faucet to a hole in the wall to major work orders such as changing out air conditioning units and things like that. Site rentals and site events is also part of the tracking with the FMX system. Since January 22 to January of 23, we have had 11,160 events at the schools, and those are non-classroom educational events. Could be community ed, club sports, chess clubs, so on and so forth. Anything that's not part of the typical educational day, it's tracked in that, and there's been over 11,000 of those. 4,200 of those have been rentals, and school events as 6,960. That will probably go up when we have a full year tracking. The school events, the 6,960 was only tracked since August of 22, so that has not been a full year. Since January of 22, we have invoiced for our rentals over $400,000 to bring some income into the district. Of the $400,000, 30% of the rental fees goes back to the individual schools, goes into their budget, and they can use for, excuse me, needed items that they need at the school. What rooms are rented? We rent out the gyms, the athletic fields, cafeterias, classrooms, whatever people need. If we have it available, then we try to rent it to them. Who rents the rooms? Sporting teams, clubs, HOAs, churches, groups like that. This is what a typical school event calendar looks like. This shows the rentals, school events, sports, fine arts, community events, kids clubs. At the bottom of each one of the days, that smaller number down there, that tells the number of events that is happening on that day. This is a district-wide calendar. It's pretty busy. In there, each individual site has their own. They can pull this up should they choose to use it, but this one here is the whole district. A couple of things that this tracking system does, it keeps people from double booking, so we don't have two events in the same room at the same time. It also allows everybody at the school sites to know what's happening each day at the sites, principals, admin, and stuff like that. This has turned into a very handy and useful program. You can thank Sherry Richards. When I came here a couple of years ago, she had already had this in place, and so she's the one that brought this in, and then we took it on to bring it into play in the district. Just a picture of, start a little bit on the custodial. This is a picture of the gym floor at Coronado Elementary, and the work was performed by Rodney Mader, our plant foreman at the Coronado school district or school, and this is just part of 1.7 million square feet that our custodians try to maintain on a daily basis. With the custodial, we've tried to upgrade the equipment by getting them some workable equipment. We've bought new vacuum cleaners, burnishers, so that floor in the preceding PowerPoint, the shiny floors, that's done with a burnisher. New carpet extractors so we can shampoo our carpets, and auto scrubbers so we can clean our polished concrete hallways, keep them nice, clean, and shiny. Hiring, we've hired 17 new custodians at our 11 sites. We are now fully staffed at the sites, except for the 5 that is outsourced. And we are trying to hire, we're 15 custodians positions that we're trying to hire. When we hire those 15, we'll be able to take over and remove or take the outsourced custodial cleaning crew and be able to have our own people. which is a good thing. Better buy-in. We are able to manage it better and cleaner buildings, more pride. We're also trying to standardize some of our things. Our summer cleanings are making sure that we get everything cleaned and stuff like that. We're standardizing our chemicals, so we're all using the same thing and also saving money trying to do that as well. Now we're going to touch into some major maintenance, and Tim will be sharing some information on that.
So, let's see.
It's right up there.
Cortina Elementary weatherization, new paint, old paint. Higley High School classroom addition, the new construction build over there. ESSER 3 funding. $1.3 million spent since January 2022 to improve air quality per ESSER 3 guidelines. District-wide global controller upgrade, the energy management system. Equipment, HVAC replacement in classroom buildings, gyms, locker rooms, and kitchens. Refrigeration replacement for walk-in cooler, freezers, cooling tower, and chiller replacement and repairs. And then on the pictures there, we have Santan, we have new cooling towers that were put in. And then Higley High School, it's a new chiller there.
We move on to the grounds. Excuse me. We do have over 300 acres of grounds to maintain as well. Along with the 300 acres of grounds, it's the first impression that, for the students, the parents, staff, and visitors when we come there, so we try to keep everything maintained. Sometimes the weeds do get away from us, but we try to maintain them weekly. We are working on playground improvements. We are improving our fall zones by adding wood chips and or the rubber chips. We are adding shade structures, and like I mentioned, keeping up with the sand, wood, and rubber chips. We have purchased some new equipment to help maintain and do things more efficiently. We've added a dump truck, a tractor, mowers and blowers are always needed with all of the grass that needs to be done. And we do all of the athletic field painting for rentals and for our athletic games and so on. So we've added some new field painting equipment as well. Weed control, we are out there daily. And then we are also working on the athletic fields, the irrigation, the field maintenance, the painting, as I mentioned, and any equipment maintenance that the athletic teams need. We try to do as many of the repairs as possible. Future projects. One of the big ones that we have going, we will be replacing all of the flooring at Power Ranch. That will be starting next week during spring break. So, we will have that completed by mid-July. We're also we do site capacity studies and walks. Each year we do a site walk is to be completed at each school. This will help us review capacity of each of the rooms for future use and help us determine the needs for schools over the next 5 to 10 years for our capital plan. The goal to standardize, once again, we're trying to standardize our custodial procedures. We are also bringing into into the district with the help of the FMX that we talked about earlier, preventive maintenance that is required by the School Facility Oversight Board. They are very picky. It's probably picky is not a good word. They're very enthusiastic about wanting to make sure that preventive maintenance is done, which is a good thing. The better we maintain it, the longer it lasts, the more money we save. We're also trying to improve our work order efficiency and working on our landscape rotation. In our 5-year capital plan, the 5-year capital plan has been created, and I have created a cycle of schools for the years. More than that, we're modifying and adjusting the 5-year plan that we have developed. And the major categories for that 5-year plan is playgrounds, flooring, HVAC, weatherization, which is a new word for we're painting the buildings, and safety and security, roofing, and building additions as needed for student growth. And that concludes everything, and thank you very much, and we'd be happy to try and answer any of your questions, should you have any.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It sounds like you're extremely busy. And I love that we're bringing the custodial services back in-house. I know that it was a need during COVID, but to save money and take control of our custodial services. Questions?
I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, thank you. I'm an educator, and I know that teachers, we can go outside and teach under a tree, but it wouldn't be the same experience. So you keep us going. Your team keeps us safe, keeps us cool, absolutely healthy. And I just want to make it known out there, and everybody knows this, I don't need to say it, but I just want to publicly state that your team and everything you do, you guys are truly the foundation to our district, and we really appreciate you.
And thank you very much. Those are very kind words, and I will relay that to the guys that are actually out there doing the work. Tim and I, we get to offer suggestions and stuff like that. There's a wonderful team out there that actually do the work. They deserve all the credit, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. I agree, and thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
We are moving on to 7.2, strategic plan update. Mrs. Richards.
Yes, President Schultz, tonight I have the honor of introducing Dr. Chris Treat. He is a key player, as you well know, in the school district, and we've been working very closely for the past couple of years, but we're not done, and there's a great future ahead of us. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Treat.
President Schultz, members of the board, it's my pleasure to give you an update on where we are with a portion of the strategic plan, specifically the Portrait of a Graduate portion. If you'll recall, a few years ago, the Portrait of a Graduate portion of this was undertaken and approved by the board. You can see here in this slide, it encompassed many of the same types of ideas that we have now. But honestly, it needed updating, it needed refinement, it needed a little bit of simplification as well, which is why over the past 2 years, as many of you are aware, we've put a lot of effort in, not just working with small groups of people, but rather involving large representative groups from everyone from students through community members, through teachers and other staff members in all departments. And this is our current Portrait of a Graduate. You can see it focuses on the ideas of responsible citizen, college and career-ready scholars, and innovative learners. And a portrait of a graduate is simply a set of goals. It's a way for a large organization like this to be able to envision what is it we really want for our students. It's a way for everyone to find their role within this process to help students develop these skills and these attributes so that they truly can take on those limitless possibilities that we hope that they're able to after being in our care. And so as we move forward a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about some of the tangible things that we have been done, that we're in the middle of doing to help bring these ideas to life. For example, with college and career ready scholars, we're working very hard to bring together our curriculum and to align our instruction to standards. I'm going to show you a little bit about some of the detail that goes with that. For responsible citizens, this is really undertaken differently on different campuses and the different types of clubs, whether it's Best Buddies or Link Crew, the way that they connect, our Veterans Day connections. It really has the opportunity to look different in different campuses, but connecting our students with the people around them so that it's not just the school community, but truly the Higley town community. And innovative learners, I'm going to show you one of the ways that we're going to approach this is through thoughtful professional development to make certain that our teachers have all the tools and all the learning, and not just from our perspective, but from their perspective, to make certain that we're incorporating feedback and requests so that when teachers express needs or administrators express needs or others who are closely associated, that when they observe training gaps, that we're able to help provide that much needed support for teachers so that they can help our students become those innovative learners. So I want to start off by kind of diving right in here with those district instructional maps. This is something that we're working on and have been working on throughout the entire school year. And the idea is, if we're truly wanting our students to be those college and career ready scholars, we need to make sure that they have the academic preparation, the knowledge and the skills. And those come from the state standards. That's our mission. That's where our home base with this. And so the better our teachers are supported in knowing what those standards are, then the better able they're going to be able to provide that direct support to students. So throughout this entire year, facilitated by our outstanding instructional coaches, fantastic teams of teachers have come in and put hours and hours of work on this. In every grade band, in every content area, they've contributed to these instructional maps to take the standards, which are broad and oftentimes overwhelming, but rather than to prioritize those standards so that we understand a logical sequence, so that we truly understand what are the knowledge and skills embedded in a particular standard. And when teachers have the power to have a say about how that instruction takes place, they're able to truly take ownership and be the leaders in developing those college and career-ready scholars. And so that work, it takes a long time. We've been going this entire year. We have a target gather date of June 1st for us to pull together all those maps that we have been putting together in all grade levels. And then the idea is to make those available to teachers so that they can, as they go through that planning process, that collaborative team process, they have their ideas in front of them, and not just the standards prioritized, but the relative resources that we have. We have adopted outstanding curricular materials, and we have great supplementals available, but they do you no good if you don't know where they are or how they relate to the standards that you're being asked to teach. And so the idea of these maps is to try to create a simplified form so that teachers can very easily work together to plan the best lessons that they can. This is truly something done with teachers, for teachers, and not done at them or something to try to enforce or prescribe any type of teaching. So we really value those partnerships and know that these are living documents and that they are always under review and always under consideration. You know, we always talk about it's important to give your best answer, give it a shot, take good notes, and then adjust it as you go from there. And that's what we encourage our teachers to do, is to say, hey, maybe we need to resequence this. Maybe we have better resources available to us. And that ongoing dialogue across the campuses helps connect the instructional side of things for our kids. If you think about the instructional cycle, it's plan, teach, measure, adjust. And this is what teachers do in the classroom. Well, we feel that instructional maps such as this that are aligned to current standards help them in that process and make it so that they're not having to hunt around and search around and hope that they have something that they can pull out that might work, but rather to build on the strength of all of their peers who have come together in this process and see their voices there. And so it's really important that we relate exactly what it is we want to teach to the materials that we have available so we can best utilize the resources that we have. So that's one of the ways that we've been kind of working toward that, is to make sure our instruction leads us in that direction of college and career-ready scholars. I've got an example here of a map. This is, I believe, a 6th grade math map that you can see. So you can see kind of some of the elements that our teachers have been working to make sure are on there so that they understand what the various learning targets are, or maybe essential questions which drive that instruction, along with those prioritized focus standards and those available resources. And the goal is to have those resources which are in our collection of approved supplementals or adopted curriculum, when possible, to be hyperlinked so that a teacher can go right from this map to the tool and be able to put those resources into play. And so these are just kind of a sampling of what it is that our folks are putting together. You know, an important question and function of an instructional map such as this is it really answers that question, how do I know what to teach? Because you might be an experienced teacher, you might have been doing something for a long time, but how do I know what I'm doing tomorrow on a Thursday morning? How do I know what's expected of me, in what sequence, to what degree, using what materials, focusing on what key vocabulary? An instructional map that's been created by expert peers is a great first step to help make sure that we aren't wondering what it is that we're supposed to teach, but we're able to align our instruction to not just the standards, but to the best ideas that we can pull together as a community. And as I said, those ideas grow and grow because these are ongoing. It also allows us a flexible mechanism for when changes happen. So when standards turn over and change, as they did over the last 5 or 6 years, this type of tool can be updated and refreshed to meet any of those changes. Or when we have adoptions or new materials come on, this allows us to put those materials as much as possible at the fingertips of our teachers so that they're not scrambling or, like in the old days, digging them out of some big box that was over there in the corner. So that's kind of the goal of this. And the idea is when we pull all these ideas together, we can help put our teachers in a position to continue to develop those college and career-ready scholars. Another part of what we're doing here, advance my slide, there we go, sorry. Another part of what we're doing here to try to make certain that we have innovative learners is to have supportive professional development. And in this district, we graciously have these early release Wednesdays, and we take it very seriously, the responsibility to make sure that we use that time to grow as professionals. And this is an example of that elementary professional learning calendar that we put together. And I think one of the things that you'll see on here is an intentional balance between giving the site some days for them to work with so that they can address their specific needs, and district level needs as well. And so that kind of balance, along with those professional learning communities and providing time for teachers specifically to meet together to work on that idea of how they can truly meet the needs of their students. So what we have here is an example of a way that we try to intentionally balance that time and get everything we can out of it to, again, allow our teachers to have that on-job opportunity to grow and further their own skills. And so many of the opportunities that really happen with this are the chances to talk to someone from another school who teaches the same grade level or teaches the same content area. It's so hard for a classroom teacher to be able to reach across to another campus and learn and grow and support someone else because of the nature of the work. It's so all-consuming. But professional development days like this, especially when we have that big district-wide PDs, provide that opportunity for folks to learn from each other as much as to learn from maybe guests or people who help facilitate learning. Here's an example of our secondary professional learning calendar. You'll see the same types of elements are put into place here, where there's a balance between site-based opportunities, collaborative team, professional learning time, and district-based. And the idea is that if we kind of take that multi-vectored approach and allow different groups to have different time to do their work, that we can best kind of meet the needs of our instructional staff so that they can learn and grow within the framework of this day and really take advantage of those opportunities. The other nice thing is because it's scheduled, because you know when it's coming, it's very easy for us to help folks prepare. And one of the important tools that we do for district-wide professional development is, as much as possible, make certain that folks know, hey, what exactly are we going to be doing there? What resources am I going to need to bring? What's our target? What are we trying to accomplish during this time? We don't want folks just showing up at a certain time and then wondering what's going to happen, but rather we want to build that anticipation. We want to help them best understand, hey, this is what the opportunity is going to be. And along with that, we also need to pay attention to how it goes. And so we always survey our teachers after every session that we have, and we dive into that data. It's very important for us to understand exactly how it went, but also to know what is it that you think we should be doing next, because based on the quality of the experience that folks have in a professional learning session, they'll often tell you, okay, this is what our next steps really need to be. And we work very hard to build those into our future sessions. So we're really doing everything we can to build a partnership between the folks that are typically delivering that professional learning experience and the people who are typically attending those. In fact, one of the things that's really important is making sure that that time is utilized so that they can really make those cross-campus connections. My hope is that in these sorts of professional development opportunities, folks will maybe meet somebody who is facing the same sorts of challenges, and they will now see an ally in another school. We don't want our schools to feel competitive with each other in that regard. We want them to be cooperative and sources of information. And it's really great to see people working together. And I know our professional development team of instructional coaches, they work really hard to make sure that everyone feels comfortable in those environments so that they can kind of be in that learning posture so that they can get everything that they can out of that. But you have to make it clear as to why we're there. And so that's why we always have success criteria and link all of our professional development to ultimately our strategic plan so that we're all moving in that same direction to make certain that we keep in mind what the needs of the learners are. This next slide here is kind of an example of just some of the promotional materials that we like to put out there. As I said, we don't want to just send an email which says, hey, show up on the 10th and, be here for 2 hours. But rather, when possible, we like to get folks excited about it. Come and know that it's going to be a time of collegial fellowship. It's going to be a time where you're going to learn something and hopefully have a good time while you're doing it. And so this is just 2 of the 4 pages of information that went out to our elementary folks for their January PD days, because this isn't just regular grade level teachers, it's also specials teachers, and those are led through the outstanding work of tremendous teacher leaders. And I just had a great meeting the other day with Brian Greenlaw, one of our fantastic elementary PE teachers, about, again, appreciating the efforts of those teacher leaders who helped out with the specials, but also, hey, what more do you need? How much can we support you? What else can we do to keep adjusting things? So for every month, we put out materials that hopefully not just inform, but also excite and help somebody build some anticipation. One of the things I always ask of our instructional coaches and facilitators of professional learning experiences is that they send out a follow-up communication to help pull together all the ideas that were learned. A lot of times in a whirlwind of conversation and learning and often a fast-paced agenda, you get a little bit overwhelmed, and we want to make sure that those resources live on, that the experience has a chance to kind of go from there. And so we always adopt a tell, show, do tomorrow kind of vision for this. We always want there to be a tomorrow aspect to it. In fact, we use the phrase tomorrow takeaways. There has to be a tomorrow takeaway for every lesson that we do in a professional learning experience so that those folks can maybe use something that they learned right away and put it into action and try it out and to continue to grow along those lines. So moving kind of into just the portrait of a graduate in general, if you'll recall, last year we spent a lot of effort in bringing kids here, as we said, representative groups, and kind of trying to get our hands around what this portrait of a graduate could look like. And so what we thought was important to do was take the next steps with that idea of, okay, what does a college and career-ready scholar look like? And instead of it just being my definition or definition of leadership or other adults, we thought, all right, it's time now to make sure that we widen this kind of concept and widen the conversation. So we built this challenge where we're going out to each of the campuses, and we've asked each of our administrators to identify a teacher leader on each site. And that teacher leader is going to, working with their administrative team, identify a handful of students to represent their campus, kind of a cross-section of the folks who go to school there. And what we've asked them is to just kind of frame a thought around, well, what does portrait of a graduate, those college and career-ready scholars and responsible citizens and innovative learners, what do those look like to you, the student, and from that student perspective, and what is it that it looks like here on your particular campus? Because even though we're a small district geographically, we still have different communities, and it's so exciting to walk on each campus and see how they view themselves within there. And the idea is for our students working with fellow students and leaders on their campus to answer this question: what does the HUSD portrait of a graduate mean to them and their school community? And right now we're getting a chance to introduce that to the folks at the campuses. Ms. Richards and I have been going around meeting with people around the district and kind of setting that idea in motion before break gets started. And I have to tell you, it's been an absolute joy getting to work with the teachers in particular, who, even though they're on the doorstep of spring break, you can see right away the creative juices are starting to flow. And just to start thinking about, hey, when we come back from break, what are some things that you can help maybe do with the kids, and how do we get the kids' voices out here as to what does that portrait of a graduate, those elements that we have identified previously, what does that look like for you on your campus? And so they're going to work on that project throughout the month of April, and then we're going to head back out in May, and the students are going to get a chance at each campus to kind of showcase their creative approach to what this portrait of graduate means to them. So there's no specific way it's going to look, or, I mean, again, we want them to be student creative and have it represent that campus. So we're really excited to kind of take that next step. So not just a small handful of students, but now moving wider and wider, and hopefully maybe create some permanent ways that that campus can introduce new students or future students to what their interpretation is, what their views are on this portrait of a graduate, and how they see themselves as those college and career-ready scholars and responsible citizens.
I love that idea. I'm excited to see the outcome of it. I think I brought this up earlier whenever we were talking about it at one of our meetings for this portion. As they invite or seek out students, will they be seeking out not just the model students, the ones that love schools, those that maybe are struggling, don't like schools so much, just to get their opinion? I would love to see what they think a portrait of a graduate looks like, and maybe light a little fire in their mind of and interact with other students.
Thank you, Vice President Anderson. We specifically have asked, and in our conversations with teachers as we start to envision what this can be, to make sure that you have a real broad representation of the population of your school. It's not all students of a certain age or grade level or of a certain GPA or something like that, but rather let's really get into the heart and soul of who goes to school here, and have everybody's voice kind of shine through, at least in a representative group like that. So you're right on the money with that.
President Schultz, Vice President Anderson, similar as the construct that we did when we did the fact-finding the first time by going out to the sites and actually widening, expanding the student groups that are there. The two of them have been giving the sort of the, here's what we're going to be working on, here's who we want you to identify, and then when we return from break, literally the three of us are going on a whirlwind tour as we go around and provide the information. allow students to then digest, think, and then work to create what that might look like for them, and then we'll come back out again for them to show and share. So by the end of the second round that we go out to them, we'll have some beautiful artifacts that we can bring back and show and share.
And Dr. Foley, may I add, President Schultz, we're going to take Curtis with us in May so we can capture some of the excitement and get it in our story. Because I think it's been good for us to have our video online because people have watched it and the kids are going to watch it when we go back out in April. So I do want to say something really quickly about Dr. Treat. When you guys approved this position, I had no idea that he was going to come back to Higley. He doesn't always brag on himself, and I want to brag because he's not just teaching the coaches, the teachers, he's teaching us. So when we go in an ed services meeting, there's always a takeaway. Here's something you can take, use with your teams, same thing with the principals. So we appreciate your support with this position and what he's done and what he continues to do. So thank you.
President Schultz. I have to agree. I can't thank you enough. Just a really quick background on Portrait of a Graduate, because some people's hair might be tingling because of those words. We sat in this room several years ago in a goal planning session, and I believe Mrs. Kaler had just returned from a National School Board Association conference and saw the Portrait of a Graduate, and that there was some defining traits and gave some direction. So when we came back and we met for our goal planning, we were talking about it, and Dr. Foley was in there, and she's like, well, wait a minute. Do you know what a Portrait of a Graduate is? Because there is a curriculum or a documented piece out there of Portrait of a Graduate. And Mrs. Kaler's like, well, I saw parts of this. And so Dr. Foley educated the board on exactly what that was. And we're like, no. That's not what we want. We want a Higley version. We want to Higley-ize it, which we do a lot of. And so Dr. Foley wasn't even in the superintendent role at that time and just ran with that. We wanted some goals. We wanted to be able to define what we want kids leaving Higley with. We want teachers to be able to have something to look at and where we're consistent. And so this was brand new with our strategic plan. And so Dr. Treat, you have taken this to a whole new level than that conversation that happened in here. You know, the board at the time, and Mr. Glover and I know Mrs. Anderson, very passionate about professional development. We had all these early release days and we weren't quite sure what was coming out of it. We didn't have structured, we had some coaches, but there was no one overseeing to really bring it all together and everything. So how you've brought the professional development to our teachers and our students, and everything here with Portrait of a Graduate, going back, we talk about our stakeholders, going back to our kids. What does this mean? Just like our strategic plan, this is going to be ever changing and evolving and moving, because what we look at today is not going to be the same in 5 years. And so I just appreciate where you've taken this idea and have made it into a very impactful, I don't want to call it a program, but part of our strategic plan, where we're not just saying you need to do this, we're providing support, and you're driving it. What does it mean to you? And when you guys defined responsible citizen, that took a whole team of people, and everyone, it took everyone to buy into it. And I see it all the time. People talk about it, and it gives people something to kind of live by. So, Dr. Treat, I have to thank you for, this is yours. This is all you, and this is yours, that you took our idea and you have brought a team in and you have created what it is. So thank you.
Thank you. You're too kind. And believe me, it's not all me. It is a huge community, but thank you for all of them.
So I had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Foley and Ms. Richards and Dr. Treat yesterday to get a better understanding of Portrait of a Graduate. And, you know, I did a lot of research prior to even knowing that this was in Higley. And I can tell you that, you know, there's a lot of valid reasons based on what I've learned in my research. And at the last board meeting, it was said, you know, we've been working on this for 2 years, and parents can go back and watch the last 2 years of board meetings. But a lot of parents didn't pay attention, and I know that. Prior to COVID, parents trusted schools and districts and teachers, and once kids went to distance learning, a lot of parents saw what was being taught in class, and so now parents are paying attention. From my research, I'd like to kind of explain the concern. I learned that Portrait of a Graduate is a national program created by a company called Battle for Kids. Battle is a applied science and technology company that uses technology to track behaviors. The program was incentivized through policies and grants in a 2015 federal education law, Every Student Succeeds, which replaced No Child Left Behind. These policies are an extension of Common Core reforms. Some of Battle's strategic partners that direct state's adoption of Portrait of a Graduate are Castle, Aurora Institute, Excel and Ed, KnowledgeWorks, which is a Bill Gates funded organization. Each of these companies is working towards a mass data collection of children's values, attitudes, and behaviors with a company called Data Quality Campaign. This program pushes families out of the picture of their children's future, replaces personal education priorities with non-academic, social justice vision of correct attitudes and mindsets, which are all social-emotional learning competencies that every child is expected to model and master. Portrait of a Graduate is being used to fundamentally transform the purpose of U.S. education, shifting curriculum assessments, school accountability, and data collection away from academics and towards social-emotional learning. Portrait of a Graduate tracks children in all sorts of social services, including health services and into the workforce. In a final scheme of things, Portrait of a Graduate is a backbone for social credit scoring and ESG scoring for children. Teachers are being shifted into becoming facilitators of social-emotional system, and over time, the entire system would be geared towards social-emotional learning. There's also another organization involved called Panorama Education. Their website shows that they build behavior surveys and data collection around Portrait of a Graduate. Panorama was founded by U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland's son-in-law, which could possibly be the reason why Merrick Garland called parents domestic terrorists. With that said, I hope you understand why parents would be concerned. The data mining children and, you know, focusing everything on the social emotional learning. And Dr. Foley assured me that that's not the district's plan, that they only took the framework from this program and and with the help of teachers, parents, and students, came up with our own version. and which isn't anything like the original program that I described above. I still see a lot of similarities, I do have to say, and I still have a lot of questions, so I will continue to come to you guys with my questions to better understand it, and to be able to, not only for myself, but also for my constituents, to assure them that what I described isn't actually what is being brought into the district. And I know this came in 2017. I was able to go back and pull it up in our agendas. But to also ensure that our district is paying attention to ensure that the core subjects are the priority for our students and that we're not veering off from that. Thank you.
President Schultz? No, that is not happening. Everything you read there, and that's when it came up, when Dr. Foley says, do you really know what that is? And she educated us on that, and we're like, no, that's not what we want. We wanted the concept of the expectation and someone leaving Higley what that should look like, whether it's this value, this value, this value, whether they're going to college, whether they're going into the career. And so, no.
But you see why parents would be concerned.
None of that is happening, and won't happen here. That is why, like I said, when Dr. Foley said there's this whole program, do you understand what that is? That using, and essentially what you read there, exploiting children for information and things like that would not ever be acceptable in this district. So, no, terminology only. And I can just encourage people to ask questions and seek information. There's a lot of buzzwords out there. There's a lot of phrasing. Like I said, portrait of a graduate's one of them. We talk about social emotional learning. There's whole curriculums. There's different things. That's another one of them. The restorative justice is another one of them, that they're concepts of looking at certain concepts. While there are programs out there, that is not what would ever be acceptable in Higley. So I appreciate you doing the research and looking at that and bringing it up so that our community can understand we are not doing a portrait of a graduate program. We have created, again, we Higleyized it. We have created our own expectations of people who graduate Higley, what that should look like.
And these conversations are important, and to question it is important. So we should be able to have these conversations without being shut down.
President Schultz, Board Member Reese, yesterday, we did have the opportunity to meet with Board Member Van Hook, where we shared and showed that over the last 3 years, the board had very specific goals. One of them, and all of them, was define a roadmap for a graduate, update the strategic plan. As you know, the strategic plan was about to retire. This was at the time, and when the district did this, back in 2017, you had brought in a company to do this, and they brought in a program to run it, to get the feedback, and the board was very clear. We have this document. It didn't get implemented till its full potential. We don't, and your team came to you and said, we have knowledge in how to look at what we have and update it, which is what we spent 2 years doing with our stakeholders, to take the parts of the original strategic plan that had been done with communities and stakeholders that had not been actualized, to evolve it to the language and words that came from Again, people were familiar with this terminology. They've been talking about it since 2017, but opening, what does it mean to us? As you know, the language we used here and we find came from initial foundation of the work that was done in that strategic plan, but we created our own and identified those procedures and processes and identified goals. As a board, you've worked to identify your self-evaluation aligned to those goals, and you've also adopted an instrument that you wanted to hold your one employee, me, accountable for, which is a part of my evaluation as well. So hence the goals that the board has set all along need to be directly connected to the strategic plan, which is the work that we have done over the last 2 years and is kind of an evolution from the work that started back in 2017. However, this time around had such a huge input from children that had not been a focal point in round one. And we feel we have a much better product than we've ever had before, and we own it. We own all of the data and we own all the feedback, which is what we implement and act from. So again, as you've heard tonight, the continued work is not done. As you know, we identified goals this year that we're working toward accomplishing, and we'll be coming to you in April with additional goals connected to that strategic plan in order for everyone to know what we're working on and how we're going to actualize the work that we prioritized in our collective strategic plan and portrait of a graduate documentation.
Other questions?
I just want to make the comment. I appreciate everyone's input and questioning and feedback and information. I know I could hear bodies move and chairs move whenever it was brought up. It's an uncomfortable conversation, and I just want to point out if Portrait of a Graduate includes critical thinking and working collaboratively, and it's good to see that up here on the dais with the board and with our administrators as we model that. So I appreciate questions, I appreciate feedback, and I don't think that should ever be a matter of contention as we sit up here as professionals. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, one of the things when we talked about the strategic plan and the Portrait of a Graduate last year, my biggest concern was implementing it and how we're going to make sure that it's happening. And I'm glad to see that very early on that we're making sure what we're saying we're going to do is what we're doing, and asking the most important people on our campuses, our children, to make sure that that's happening and that we're preparing them for the world ahead. So I appreciate that very much, that it's not just a document sitting in a shelf somewhere and we look back on it once every year. So thank you very much for that, Dr. Treat.
Thank you.
Moving on to 7.3, second review of the 2023-2024 capital outlay budget.
Yes, good evening, President Schultz, members of the board. Tonight I'll present the second review of the FY24 capital budget. This review is truncated from the first review and just really covers the change that was made from the first review. As I've adopted the presentation acronym slide here, I'm not going to go over each acronym, but again, for any community member or staff, employee watching this and is not familiar with our acronyms that we utilize in the budget process, this is your cheat sheet. There we go. So as a reminder, the fiscal 2024 capital budget highlights include the first one, the DAA update, that's the district additional assistance, which is capital, they're used interchangeably, is going into its second year of being fully restored. And again, this was fully restored last year from the 2008-2009 recessionary cuts. So the state brought that funding back up to those levels of funding from 2008-2009. As you know, we've realized a lot of inflation, various adjustments in our economy, and so that funding source, while we're happy it's fully restored, is still inadequate, which you'll see in the next category here. They did approve in that K-12 budget last year inflation adjustment over the next 3 years, as they've basically recognized that that funding source is not enough for districts to sustain their capital needs. And so there is a small inflation adjustment over the next 3 years that was approved in last year's K-12 budget bill. The emphasis on this budget is in major maintenance projects. Our schools are aging. The average age of our schools is now 16 years. 20 years, if you ask Mr. Dobson back there, is really the year in which we hit a lot of those major projects in terms of time to basically tear out and redo. So roofing, weatherization, those big projects that cost a lot of money typically have that 20-year timeline. How we're funding a lot of our major maintenance projects is from the M&O to capital transfer, which is what the district has historically done due to the fact that we do not have additional capital funding via a bond and or override. So we always are working to supplement funding with the Schools Facilities Oversight Board. That's a state fund in which they provide capital funding to school districts that don't meet adequacy guidelines. This funding source is limited, and it's supposed to encompass all the state's schools, so over 150 public schools. With every school submitting projects to that, you can see how that limits the amount of projects that get approved. But we are constantly submitting projects to get funded by that source, and that is always our first goal before utilizing our own budget. And the third emphasis is adding the phased security upgrades. As I mentioned, this was approved or proposed in the bond, the 2022 bond, that did not pass. And so we realize that is still a need for our district, a priority to invest in security. We have aging security equipment, and so we're looking at phasing in that equipment over the next several years. And then to the left, just a picture of Chaparral Elementary. They are proposed in this plan to receive a weatherization and exterior painting, so which would address this leaking wall hydrants throughout the campus that's causing severe stucco fracturing. So I'm not going to go line by line as I already presented this, but I do want to highlight the one highlighted here and then another highlight in the next slide. But safety and security, the one change from the first review to the second review is we increased this by $25,000. And I'll explain why when I go to this slide, is we decreased our capital projects by $25,000. So we did a first review of our capital projects for next fiscal year. That encompasses every school principal submitting basically projects that they cannot fund from their capital budget. These projects are larger in nature, so they're not just buying student desks or chairs for a particular classroom. It's more or less replacing a whole entire school of furniture or major renovations that they have prioritized for their campus that they cannot fund. So we did a first review. The reoccurring theme was security cameras. And so we are investing that $25,000 back into security cameras. And so that will allow us to do another additional camera to every single campus next year. So in that original proposal, the $350,000, that provided 5 cameras for every single campus. Now we are able to get an additional camera on every single campus, just putting that money where our schools are asking us to put it. I do want to highlight at the bottom of this capital budget here, the budget formula. So the total budget for next fiscal year is proposed at $17.4 million. How that is made up is first line under that total expenditures is $6.6 million being transferred from our M&O, our maintenance and operations budget, to the capital budget. And as you know, on this previous slide, the building leases, the line 3, that's taking up $3.5 million of that transfer. The rest is for the major maintenance projects that we are funding. The second line on the bottom there, the DAA budget capacity, this is our state-derived budget, $6.8 million. And then the estimated budget amounts carried forward, this is what we anticipate carrying forward from this fiscal year into next year, $4 million. So that's how we get to that $17,413,743 budget for next fiscal year. I do want to point out, So we have now taken a first review of the capital budget on February 8th. On February 22nd, we reviewed our second review of M&O. Tonight, we're asking for tentative approval later in the agenda for our M&O budget. And I just presented the second review of our capital budget. And if there is no further questions on April 5th, I will bring a tentative approval of the fiscal 24 capital budget to allow us to get out and purchase some of those items that require long lead item time for next fiscal year. And then again, you'll see this official capital budget proposed and adopted in June, when that's statutorily required, and those official budget forms come out. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Ms. Vanderkam.
Is the phase 2, the 2.8, included in that major project of 4.3?
No, phase 2 is going to be recommended from this fiscal year budget.
So it's above and beyond that, the 4 million.
This budget is for next fiscal year. Phase 2 that's being proposed later in the agenda is being recommended out of this fiscal year 2023's budget.
Thank you.
Other questions? I just want to, so everyone heard you, to make sure that we're restored to 2008, 2009 funding, which is 15 years ago, and I'm sure all of our budgets have changed in the last 15 years and the cost of items, so difficult to work with that. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Moving on to 7.4, Higley High School Phase 2.
All right, good evening, President Schultz, members of the board again. Tonight we're bringing an information item and later a recommendation for approval of Phase 2 for Higley High School. I guess I'll go back first. I just want to point out that this project initially, Phase 2 initially stemmed from the bond proposal. And so there was 5 community meetings held at Higley High School. I know several of you had a chance to attend. And during those meetings, we worked with the students, the teachers, the community to identify priorities for Higley High School, pretty much for the next 5 years, really forward the thinking and try to making that campus standardize it and make it a campus where students want to attend. When the bond proposal failed, we went back and reviewed Phase 2 and looked at it from a district perspective and what we can do to basically maintain safety and security. There was already several needs on that campus in terms of addressing safety and security, like I mentioned, and I'll go over some of those tonight. Again, we have a presentation acronym slide here. These are the acronyms used in the presentation. But really, so give a little update on Phase 1, and if Chase Building team can come up here, Mr. Lee and Michael Diaz are here from Chase Building. But just an update on Phase 1. On the left is the rendition that the board has seen from a DLR architectural firm. On the right is a current, and actually that's not even current because if you walked over right now, they are well ahead of that schedule. But the building is still on track to open for next school year. And I guess I'll let Matt Lee and Mike Diaz give you a little update on Phase 1 right now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moore. President Schultz, members of the board, my name is Matt Lee, pre-construction manager with Chase, along with Mike Diaz, project manager on the job. So kind of just a brief overview of everything we've been through. We had some really nasty site work going on with this job. We had a lot of existing utilities going through an occupied campus. That was a very challenging part of this project. Unfortunately, we were able to get through that. To this day, we've kind of done a lot of the dirty work. And you guys have probably walked around and said, what are these guys doing? All I see is dirt and fence and haven't seen anything cool yet. So we're excited to announce that in the next couple months, you're gonna see this building really start to pop. So on Monday, we're actually pouring our second floor slab. And then following that, you're gonna start to see the roof start to enclose and you're gonna start to see those exterior elements, all those cool finishes, the metal panels, all the different colors. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're really tracking well. We had quite a few delays with all the rain we've had this winter. So fortunately, we've been able to make up quite a few days, and we're happy to announce that we are. As of today, we're on track to open for this coming school year. So we're super excited.
Yeah, I know it was 58 days delayed, right? Is that what it was originally? So I'm glad you were able to make it up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So jumping to phase 2, so this is what the district is recommending today. So throughout that community meetings, again, we phased back some of the items that were not necessarily needs and or wants for that camp, or excuse me, needs for that campus. And we narrowed it down to these 3 items here. The total project budget for this phase 2, the district set $3.5 million from the capital budget. GMP 3 came in at $2.8 million, and that includes the restroom refresh, which I have a slide going into the detail on that, the campus security lighting, traffic flow modifications. And I do want to note the traffic flow modifications, $400,000 of that $2.8 million will be funded from the Adjacent Ways Fund, which is a different fund, not capital. And that's a state-derived fund that we can levy for, can be used for any public right-of-way, fire lane, school bus lane. And so we're utilizing those funds as, again, they were kind of freed up from the consent judgment that the district approved from the Birdwell litigation and the, I guess, proposed misuse of public funds. So GMP 4, I do want to mention that that is not on this recommendation right now. I mentioned earlier in the capital plan that we are continuing to pursue additional grant funds. And so we do have tentative approval from the SFOB, the School Facilities Board, to fund 82% of that exterior weatherization for that campus. So while I don't know a number, that exterior weatherization will be well over $1 million. So 82% is over $800,000, which is a huge lift from our budget. Now, we do get to play the game of waiting for the grant to be approved and the School Facilities Board to approve that, and which bucket of money, whether it be this year or next year's funds, that gets approved from. So that's why, again, that's not being brought tonight as we wait for that approval from the School Facilities Board to take advantage of that grant funding. The campus, I would want to note, was assessed, and I think 99% of the paint and exterior weatherization failed their assessments. So if that's any indication on the, basically the condition of Higley High School, it's well written in that assessment by 99% of the building failing their assessments. So let's dive a little bit into this GMP3. So the restroom refresh, again, this was all covered in the community meetings, but every single restroom will be touched. We've done some things with Chase Building Team to kind of save costs with flooring, but a lot of the tile is all from the original build, and so this is 20 plus years old, much like a home renovation. 20 years is a long time to not touch something. So everything really needs to be, taken out, redone for basically our students' safety, as well as just feeling comfortable using the bathroom. Throughout this community meeting, several of the students commented that they don't use the restrooms because they do not feel comfortable going to the bathroom at the school. And that's just, I think, unacceptable from a district standpoint, that we can't have public facilities that students feel comfortable using. Campus security and lighting. The campus, again, still has original lighting in most places. Any place in which we've had to change or modify, we've tried to put LED lighting. But again, lightening up the interior of the campus for safety concerns when students are on the campus late evenings for sporting events, after-school activities. There's an existing picture of what the campus looks like. It's very dark, and so we want to light that up and make sure it's visible. Again, if students feel safe traveling the campus both in early morning, late at night. And the last one here, traffic flow modifications. I think this is a big one. As the campus continues to grow, the student population, with students parking on campus, parents drop off, continues to increase. And the town of Gilbert has made us aware of issues on Pecos and has asked us to come up with addressing some issues here. And so this is a loose rendition. I do want to point out that the actual traffic flow may take shape differently as we see the first day how things flow. But the main points of emphasis on here are moving the bus drop to the back of the campus, making that bus lane a one-way lane, and also gating near the north side of the football field and the bottom half by the cafeteria. So limiting traffic behind the school, again, a safety concern. We had parents dropping kids off back there. Limiting that, making it a one-way and a bus-only drop-off lane. In addition, at the front of the school, so we would reutilize that bus bus drop-off, current bus drop-off, and connect the front office parking lot to the existing student lot, which increases queuing 3 times, I believe, what we can do just in that front lot. So what this does is it gets traffic off of Pecos, where we have seen families dropping students off on Pecos, students running across Pecos. We've had accidents, unfortunately, with families dropping students off on Pecos. So it gets students' parents off of Pecos and onto our campus and queuing on our campus rather than on Pecos. The town has worked with us, and they're very supportive of this. They're also working to address some of the light concerns. So while bringing all that traffic onto the campus and into the student lot, some of the concerns were, how do we get rid of all those cars? How do we move all those cars out? And so the town has talked about syncing the light, the Higley Drive light and the Pecos light. So if parents were taking a left onto Recker to Pecos, those 2 lights would be synced and turn green at the same time so traffic can flow and move some of those cars off the campus. The last thing would be, this is our only campus in which we are fencing and securing our parking lot. And so this proposal would move the fencing down to the building level and secure the building, which would open up a couple entrances in that student parking lot that are currently being fenced. This would also help our security guards in terms of points of entry for that campus and reducing it down to the northwest entrance by the courtyard. And so,
all right.
Go ahead.
Going back to the map right there, we're making traffic flow modifications, and it looks like there's very limited land. And I've received some public feedback regarding parking. And it's not just for students, it's just for the events that occur at the Performing Arts Center. Is that ever an option for this campus?
Yeah, so we priced some parking options. We even priced a parking garage, and it was just the total budget. It was over $3.5 million. So it wasn't feasible. And so we are adding some parking in that bus lane. So that would be facing, you can see it kind of striped a little bit. I think we're getting 40 spots, 30 to 40 spots, don't quote me on that. But we are getting some additional parking right there. But to add additional parking in some mass capacity that makes budgetary sense, it would be, we do not have the budget to do that. And so.
So as far as you know, this may not be the time to talk about it, but it hasn't impacted any events from occurring in the Higley Performing Arts Center because of the parking. Have you heard any feedback regarding that?
Not that I'm aware of. We do utilize both the student lot and the district office parking lot when there's a large event. And so.
And those lights will be super helpful because people will be traveling all the way across
campus, yeah.
Yeah, in those moments. Okay, I just wanted to ask, thank you.
And so a little bit of the construction timeline. Again, we hope to bring GMP4, which would include the weatherization and painting, back on April 5th. Again, that's contingent on the school facilities board proving that, blessing that, and so it would allow Chase to price that out and us to bring a price back. I kind of just put a general timeline, but summer break is going to be major traffic at Higley High School. So as you saw, we're going to be all over that campus, not just at the phase 1 of finishing up that new building, but modifying the traffic flow in the interior of the campus, across all the campus restrooms. And so major construction traffic across Higley High this summer. And again, we, as of today, I don't want to put it on pen to paper yet, because we never know with construction, but we will anticipate that new building addition being open for the first day of school. And so as we get closer, we'll identify a groundbreaking, or not groundbreaking, but grand opening date to share. And hopefully, again, be open for the first day of school. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I have one question on the fencing. When we move the fencing, are we repurposing that fencing so we don't have to buy additional fencing?
Yeah, that's one point of emphasis. You can ask Mike in our owners' meetings that I've asked. And so if it is in good use, if there are pieces that we can't use, we obviously will not use them. But myself and Mr. Dobson have looked at some of the fencing. A lot of it seems like we can reuse. And so we're going to try to repurpose that to basically as much as we can. So
awesome. And can we just remind our community that this will be classroom space for Higley High School, or as far as, what we are using it for, for the project?
Yeah, so phase one stemmed from the Higley High campus running out of space. So their enrollment has grown drastically over the last several years. And this year they were utilizing traveling teachers. And so that's teachers without a homeroom. And so the campus needed additional classroom space to accommodate the students that are enrolled at the campus. And so phase one is 12 classrooms. And so we hope that provides enough room for growth for the next several years, not only just this next year. So.
Perfect, thank you. Other questions? I'm very happy the bathrooms are getting an update too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to action items, 8.1, approval of GMP number 3 for phase 2 of Higley High School project to Chase Building. I motion we approve of GMP number 3 for phase 2 of Higley High School project to Chase Building.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. I'm moving on to 8.2. I make a motion that for the tentative approval of the fiscal year 2024 maintenance and operations budget.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Did you say aye?
I didn't say aye, sorry. Aye.
Oh, okay. Or nay, either way. The motion passes 4-0. I make a motion that we approve moving on to 8.3, I make a motion that we approve the issuance of certified educational professionals, administrative contracts, and classified work agreements with the increase listed below to the base salary or base hourly rate for the 2023-2024 school year.
President Schultz? President Schultz, may I address? And board members? I'd like to say first that I'd like to make an announcement, if that's okay at this point.
Absolutely.
We have Mrs. Angie Walker in the room. If you'd please stand up. She is our newest. Mrs. Walker is our newest assistant principal. She will be located at Gateway Point Elementary School. She is just a fine example of what a Higley Unified School District employee looks like, as well as living the values of Higley. And so with that, I give you Mrs. Walker, and I think she has someone with her this evening, if you wanted to introduce him. Thank you. Thank you.
Was that the partner you were referring to, Mrs. Johnson? Congratulations, Mrs. Walker. And questions, comments, concerns?
What are we on?
I think
8.3?
8.3, yes, or second, sorry. Who's
do
second?
have a
My
comment.
second. Okay. Go ahead.
So my concern here is that I would have liked to have seen more options as far as the the salary increases. As we discussed earlier today during our meeting, we're increasing salaries to ensure that we're being competitive, but then our districts around us are also increasing their salaries, which then puts us back down. And we're going to be in this constant back and forth of competing with the districts. We're going to raise it, they're going to raise it, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to be on top. And the fact that we're hearing that if we don't approve a bond or an override in 2024, that kids are going to be impacted and programs such as music could be cut, is a huge concern for me, because I don't want the kids to have to be impacted at all. These programs are so important to them, and that shouldn't happen. So I would have liked to be able to see different options, maybe, a little less of raises so that the kids aren't impacted, but that's a huge concern for me. So I don't know how I feel about the 2% increase. That's all.
I hear what you're saying. I absolutely do not want programs to be cut. We also have to have teachers to teach the programs, and we're not going to be able to have staff or teachers if we're not paying them. There's 7% inflation rate, correct? 7% inflation rate, and so the 2% doesn't even meet that for them being able to take care of their families, for teachers and admin, and to be able to have those teachers. And so I don't absolutely want any program to be cut, but we have to be able to have qualified and amazing staff to be able to make that happen as well. So it's kind of a balancing, juggling act that we're facing. And I think last year we were given several options, but that wasn't an option this year to do. I think 2% was all we could do and able to do it right now.
And we did do a 6% last year, correct? So 6% last year and an additional 2% this year, with the potential of kids being impacted. And again, we have one of the highest salaries compared to the districts around us. And knowing that, for instance, Chandler is working on a raise, which then might put us back down again. So at what point do we compromise and say, okay, we need to ensure that the kids aren't impacted, but also be able to do, somewhat of a raise, but ensure they're taken care of here. Just that.
President Schultz, I hear you. We can't see the future, so we don't know what's going to happen. We don't want any of our kids impacted. Mrs. Anderson was part of the district, I think, at the time, and I was on the board when we were having to talk about doing some cuts, and that's not a conversation that you want to get into, because like you said, you don't want to impact kids, and all of those programs have value in different ways. It may not be reading and writing, but they provide value, for sure. The problem is if we don't, like you said, and we talked about this last board meeting too, is that we keep going up and down, and the larger districts have more money. They get more, they're bigger, and so they can do a little bit more. But we know that Chandler's looking at increasing theirs. We know that Mesa, the districts around us they're going to increase theirs, and they're going to go above us, and we know that. But if we do nothing, we're that much further behind. So it creates a larger gap. While, don't get me wrong, there is a little sense of pride that on our little sheet that at the moment I can be like, look at, we did it, because again, we're small and we want to give as much as we can to our staff. And because we don't see us on top regarding pay. We just don't. We don't have it. We're not as big. And that's why, for me, it's very important for all these other things, everything Dr. Treat's doing, all the professional development, the support, because once their boards approve their increases, we're going to be back down again. And so the environment, the culture, the support is what I think how we can try and make someone feel a little bit better about making a little bit less than their counterparts, because everyone knows you go to a bigger district and you just kind of get swallowed up, and you're lucky if you get the professional development or people who know, we get to do all this cross collaboration, and so I think that's where we add value over salaries. Us being on top is going to be a moment, and I want to take that moment because again, it doesn't happen very often. But if we don't, we're going to have a larger gap. And then those programs, we're not going to have the discussion of us trying to figure it out. They're going to weed themselves out. We're going to have classrooms that have a large amount of kids that will overstress our teachers because we won't be able to attract them. We'll have some. We have our dedicated teachers who are here for that environment, and we will have some. It will be so much harder for us to attract new teachers. It will be so much harder for us to retain. Part of our conversations have been, if we try and get through from years 3 to 5, people come, they gain that experience, and once they have experience, then they can go to another district making a lot more money, because obviously at that point they have experience, which is no different than any other industry. You start an industry, you gain that experience, you're going to be paid more going somewhere else. So retaining those teachers, which is a large group, a large number of teachers, is going to be hard. We have teacher shortages all over the place. So I hear you. We had options last year, like Mrs. Schultz said. And that was a conversation I had. It's not that I didn't want to do the 6%. We had those conversations, and it was an internal battle for me, and I supported it, and I support our teachers. We don't have those options this year. We're not as fortunate, but everything's going up, and we need to try and stay competitive with salaries, and the less we do, the greater the gap becomes, because they're still going to do it. So I understand what you're saying. I can't make a decision, and I know Tyler's going to look at me, because I always look to the future, and I always say, let's prepare for things that we might not know about. Let's make sure we're okay with costs that go up. What if this, what if that, for unanticipated increases. But I can't not approve this with the thought of, are we going to be able to pass another M&O override? I mean, luckily it has a sunset, that it's over several years, and I'm hoping, and our community has been fabulous about supporting that, but I can't go with, I can't approve this, or I hear your concerns, so, because we may not have something in 2 years. So, because then, like I said, if we fall that far behind, we're gonna be figuring out what to do just to maintain regular classrooms. That wasn't a pretty time in Higley, and I don't want to go back to that. So I hear your concerns. I agree. I mean, last year we had options. And quite honestly, for me, like Mrs. Schultz said, 2% is not hardly anything. I mean, everyone, Social Security got an increase this year. They got a large increase. Everything's going up, and this doesn't even cover that. So, so in my opinion, 2% is actually fairly low, given the circumstances of where we are in our economy right now. But I agree, options would be nice, but I think that this is minimally what we can do.
And I 100% support our teachers, all of our staff, and I think that they're just as important, right? But I don't want to be using this as a form of pulling the parents' heartstrings, going, your kid's music's going to be cut if you don't approve a bond or override in 2024 when we make this decision. And this was part of the reason why I was last year, like I wish last year maybe wasn't as large to where this year could have been a little bit larger. But that's just, that's just how I feel about it. Like, I don't want to tell parents, like, this is why you should vote yes for a bond, because otherwise your kids' programs are going to be cut. So that's all.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? I just want to say that we won't be tugging on heartstrings. We will have to have real conversations in 2024 and 2025. I've seen our budget and where we're at. So,
Mrs. Schultz, can I just clarify that the bond, we don't have a bond, that we have an M&O override that is funding a lot of those extracurriculars, and that is outlined on our website on what that is funding and what that was voter approved for. But I just want to clarify, it's M&O override, so.
Thank you. Mrs. Anderson.
To speak to what Christina was saying, in that moment in time, usually the cuts, I would hope would never, they can make cuts in other areas before they try to make cuts that impact the school district. And of course, you could say you can make a cut anywhere and it will impact the students. It'll trickle down and it will impact the students. But I've been there in the district office where an HR department went from 7 to 3. A grown woman, I was a grown woman, and I was bawling, bawling on my knees watching these people be cut. So never again will I ever want those, and that's many moons ago, reason why I ran for school board, to stand up against a superintendent at the time who was making other decisions that were impacting our budget and causing cuts like this. But as a teacher, I did sit down and I did some quick little math at home, and how much do we really make an hour? And it all depends on how many hours you work, and we could all argue how much we work. And I just took that 45,886, the base, and said, hey, work 190 days in 12 hours is about the average that I put in mind. I am a department chair, and I do work weekends, and I do work evenings. So that base at 190 days, 12 hours, a quick little calculation was $20 an hour. That's not much. That's not much. So I said, okay, well, realistically, I mean, I like to work, so I will put in those hours. So what about an 8-hour day? And even my husband, I was talking about, he's like, do an 8-hour day. I said, okay. And that did beef it up to $30 an hour. Then I said, well, let's, the middleman, let's take 10 hours, because no teacher that I know, nobody in the education field works 8-hour days. If we took middleman at 10 hours a day, and then if you did 10 hours a day, that's $24 an hour. That's not much. I buy tissues, and I've heard the argument, well, there's other careers where they buy there's tools and things for their job, and absolutely, and that is expensive. And that's unfortunate. But they probably get to take their tools home at the end of the day, and those are their tools. Everything I buy for the classroom, I don't get back. The markers go, tissues, I can't even keep up with that. It's gotten to a point in the household where I had a bag of juices sitting on the counter, and my husband's like, you're taking more. And he wasn't being rude. He's like, you're taking more. And I'm like, no, these are ours. These are our juices. You know, like we get to keep juices at home. It's not for the kids. And I'm taking up your time. I just want to say, I support increasing the salary in the money for these educators and the employees of the school district because they desperately need it. They need to feel valued. It is a thankless job. It is a job filled with a lot of effort, and it's never for the paycheck. Not 1 second for the paycheck. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents from my experience.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Any other questions, comments, concerns? And I laughed at your juice, but it's not funny that you have to order to keep juices. I'm sorry. Okay, I lost where we were. I apologize. I think, yes, 8.3, all those in favor? Aye. All those, any opposed?
I'm going to have to vote nay.
Okay, motion passes 3-1. 8.4, salary schedule. I make a motion that salary schedule and rate adjustments. Approve. Sorry. I don't think I said that right. Right. I did motion, yeah.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Questions, comments, concerns? Yeah, the 2% took us to 8.4. Questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried, passes 3-1. Future agenda items. We have some items listed here. Any future agenda items? Mrs. Anderson?
Yes. We used to have student art in the board room. Did we choose to not do that anymore? Maybe it was a few years ago. Was a decision that was changed or made?
So, Vice President Anderson, it was my understanding the art came from like our fine arts festivals and other events. And I don't remember how many years ago, but we started giving it back to the schools to post the art in the schools rather than here because I don't know, they don't come over here all the time and say, hey, where's my painting? So that's my understanding of what took place, so.
When they painted and redid and had to take everything down, then they started sending it back to the schools so it could be, because it is the art that was in here was from the Fine Arts Festival, yes.
Would it not be an option? Like, would they like to share it? We have our Points of Pride here, you know, couple times a month. I mean, and they get to see their schools displays of.
President Schultz, Vice Member Anderson, if you walk down the hallway, you'll see that every month we have a rotating art display that shifts. Perhaps we could talk with the groups that we use to help do that to see if there's a potential for rotating it in here because it is missing a touch of, if you walk down the hallway toward my office, there's such warmth when you see children's artwork everywhere. It is a tad stale at this point.
Sharing is caring, Dr. Tully, so if you wouldn't mind bringing some.
I am all for sharing. I am all for sharing, Vice President Anderson.
Thank you. And I had another, I'm not sure how to do this, but there is policy GCCA, which talks about employee leave. And I would like to talk about parts of it. Obviously not today, but it's something that I could put forward on the agenda.
Yeah, Vice President Anderson, that has been an ongoing conversation with Meet and Confer, and we're preparing to bring up recommendation to modify that policy. So we were already in the works of that, so yeah. You shall see that in a future board agenda item.
Anything else? All right, with that, then I want to tell everyone to have a safe and relaxing spring break, and I hope that our teachers and staff enjoy some time off. And I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.